Close your eyes if you wish, and let your mind drift to the bleak, gray streets of 1980s Soviet Russia, where the air carries the chill of winter and the faint smell of diesel from rattling buses. It's a time of scarcity, of long queues for bread and whispered dissent, where the Soviet system creaks under its own weight. Beneath this austere surface lies a darker shadow, cast by Andrei Chikatilo, a man whose monstrous crimes horrified a nation. Hey everyone, welcome back. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It motivates me to make more content like these for you. And let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from today and what time it is for you. We love hearing of how many places are people joining us from. Tonight, we'll step into his world, imagining the quiet dread of working alongside him, unaware of the danger in his gaze. We'll trace his reign of terror, explore the unsolved mysteries that haunted his era, and uncover the hidden opulence of the Soviet black market lords. This journey is one of subtle unease and fascination, told with a gentle cadence to guide you toward rest. Settle in, breathe deeply, and let the rhythm of Russia's past carry you softly forward. Our story begins in Rostov-on-Don, where a coworker's ordinary life brushes against a killer's shadow. Picture yourself in 1984, in the industrial city of Rostov-on-Don. The Don River winds through a landscape of concrete apartment blocks and smoky factories. The air is thick with the scent of coal dust, boiled cabbage from communal kitchens, and the faint metallic temps of rusting tram tracks. You're a clerk or supply manager, perhaps in your 30s, working at a state-run factory or school, earning 120 rubles a month, barely enough for rent, bread, and the occasional sausage. Life in the Soviet Union is a daily grind. Queues for groceries stretch for hours, and the state's watchful eyes discourage questions. Your coworker is Andrei Chikatilo, a quiet, bespectacled man in his late 40s, his thinning hair combed neatly, his suit threadbare but clean. He's a supply clerk now, after years as a teacher, and his soft voice and awkward demeanor make him seem harmless. It's something about him, his lingering glances, his odd silences, sets your nerves on edge, like a faint hum you can't quite place. Your days begin early, the city waking with the clatter of trams and the drone of factory whistles. You share an office with Chikatilo, a cramped room with peeling wallpaper and a single bulb, casting dim light over stacks of paperwork. He's diligent, logging shipments of paper or machine parts, but his presence is unsettling. His eyes, pale and unblinking, seem to study you when he thinks you're not looking. He asks strange questions about your family, your children's routines, or where you take the train after work. His tone is polite, almost overly formal, but it carries a weight like a stone dropped into still water. You brush it off, chalking it up to his eccentricity, but the unease lingers, a knot in your chest that tightens each day. You often travel together on work trips, boarding crowded trains to nearby cities like Shakhty or Novocherkassk. Picture the train carriage, its air heavy with cigarette smoke and the sour smell of unwashed coats. Chikatilo sits across from you, his hands folded neatly, his gaze fixed on the passing fields or, sometimes, on a young passenger, child or teenager, his fingers twitching slightly. He might offer you a piece of black bread or a boiled egg from his bag, his smile thin but insistent. You decline, your stomach turning, though you can't say why. The train's rhythm wheels clacking, brakes screeching feels like a pulse, but it can't drown out the sense that something is wrong. He talks about his childhood in Ukraine, his voice low, mentioning hunger and war, with a detachment that chills you. Back in Rostov, the city buzzes with whispers of missing children. A girl, 13, vanished from a bus stop near the factory last month, her scarf found in a ditch. A boy, 9, didn't return from a park near the Don River, his name printed in Sovetskaya Rossiya, with no follow-up. The police, clad in gray uniforms, patrol the streets, but their focus is on political dissent or black marketeers, not disappearances in working-class neighborhoods. Colleagues murmur in the canteen, their voices low over bowls of watery borscht, about a monster preying on the vulnerable. You notice Chikatilo's absences days when he leaves early, claiming errands, returning with dirt on his shoes or a faint chemical smell on his coat, like bleach or turpentine. Try to dismiss it, but the rumors cling to you, like the damp chill of Rostov's winters. Your workplace is a microcosm of Soviet life, great, rigid, suffocating. The factory's walls are plastered with posters of Lenin, urging productivity, but the air smells of oil and stale tea. You file reports, count supplies, and avoid Chikatilo's desk, where he keeps a locked drawer you've never seen opened. Once he asks you to deliver a package to a contact in a nearby town, a heavy parcel wrapped in brown paper, its contents rattling softly. The address is a rundown building, its windows boarded, and the man who takes it avoids your eyes. You return uneasy, and Chikatilo thanks you with a nod, his smile fleeting but sharp, like a blade catching light. You start checking the locks on your apartment door, a flimsy barrier in a concrete block where neighbors keep to themselves. Life in Rostov is a constant struggle. You queue for hours at state stores, the shelves often bare except for canned fish or stale bread. Your meals are simple petos, buckwheat, kasha, a sliver of butter if you re-lucky the clink of your spoon, a small comfort against the growing dread. The city's streets lined with leafless trees and cracked pavement feel oppressive, the gray sky pressing down. You hear more stories, a teenager missing from a train station, a child's shoe found near a forest. You notice Chikatilo watching children at bus stops, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. You want to speak up, but fear stops. You fear of being wrong, of losing your job, of drawing his attention. The Soviet system discourages questions, and survival means keeping your head down. Living in Chikatilo's shadow is a quiet torment, a daily dance with suspicion where every interaction feels like a test. The city's pulse drums, factory horns. The chatter of neighbors offers no solace when you work beside a man whose silence hides something unspeakable. You wouldn't last a day, not because of violence, but because the weight of his presence would unravel your nerves thread by thread. This was the suffocating reality of being near Andrei Chikatilo, a man whose ordinary facade concealed a monster. But who was he, this figure who terrorized Rostov? Let's step back and trace the arc of his life, a story of horror that shook a nation. Imagine yourself now as a silent observer, standing on the fringes of 1980's Rostov-on-Don, watching a man whose unassuming exterior hid a darkness that would scar a nation. Andrei Chikatilo, known to coworkers as a quiet clerk or former teacher, was a figure of chilling duality, awkward, soft-spoken, yet driven by a compulsion that claimed over 50 lives between 1978 and 1990. In a Soviet Union, where state control stifled expression and scarcity defined daily life, Chikatilo's crimes unfolded in the shadows, exploiting the system's blind spots. Let's trace his path, step by careful step. From a troubled childhood to his reign as the Butcher of Rostov, weaving a narrative that's haunting yet soothingly told, guiding you gently toward rest. Born in 1936 in Yabloknoye, Ukraine, Chikatilo grew up in a world scarred by famine and war. Picture a rural village, its air heavy with the scent of damp earth and straw, where families huddled in wooden huts, their lives shaped by the Soviet collectivization that left millions starving. His mother told stories of the 1933 Holodomor, a man-made famine that killed millions, her voice trembling as she described neighbors eating grass to survive. Chikatilo, a shy, nearsighted boy, was bullied for his frailty, his glasses a target for mockery. He later claimed a brother was eaten during the famine, though no records confirmed this, a tale that fueled his warped psyche. By his teens, he was withdrawn, his inner world a tangle of shame and rage. Shaped by a domineering mother and a father humiliated as a POW in World War II. In the 1950s, Chikatilo pursued education, dreaming of a stable Soviet life. Picture him in a cramped classroom, its walls plastered with Marxist slogans, studying to become a teacher. He earned a degree, but struggled with authority, his soft voice and nervous demeanor earning little respect. By 1971, he was teaching at a vocational school in Novoshakhtinsk, near Rostov, where the air smelled of chalk dust and coal smoke. Students mocked his awkwardness, and allegations of inappropriate behavior with children surfaced. Though Soviet bureaucracy buried them, fired in 1974, he drifted 2 clerical jobs, working in factories and supply offices. His unremarkable presence, thin frame, cheap suit, wire-rimmed glasses blending into Rostov's gray landscape. His killings began in 1978 in Shakhty, a mining town near Rostov. Picture a quiet street, its pavement cracked, where Chikatilo lured 9-year-old Yelena Zakhanova to an abandoned shed, promising candy. Her life ended there, her body left in a frozen ditch, as reported by Sovetskaya Russia. The police, pressured to maintain the Soviet myth of a crime-free society, arrested an innocent man who was later executed. Chikatilo's compulsions grew, driven by a mix of sexual dysfunction and sadistic urges. He targeted the vulnerable children, runaways, prostitutes often at train stations or bus stops, where the clatter of crowds masked his approach, though we'll spare the details, focusing instead on the lives cut short. Their dreams silenced in forests or empty lots. Between 1978 and 1990, Chikatilo killed at least 52 people, mostly women and children, across Rostov and beyond. Picture a train platform, its air thick with diesel and cigarette smoke, where he'd approach a teenager, offering a ride or a meal. His victims, often from broken homes or transient lives, trusted his fatherly demeanor. He led them to secluded spots, wooded areas along the Don River, abandoned buildings smelling of mildew and rust where their fates were sealed. Bodies were found weeks later, hidden under leaves or snow, as documented in Komsomolskaya Pravda. Chikatilo disposed of evidence with care, burning clothes or scattering remains, exploiting the Soviet police's inefficiencies. His job as a supply clerk gave him freedom to travel, his trips to Ukraine or Moscow leaving a trail of grief. Chikatilo's double life was chillingly ordinary. He lived with his wife, Fayana, and 2 children in a Rostov apartment, its walls thin, the air heavy with boiled potatoes and laundry soap. Neighbors saw him as a dull bureaucrat, his evenings spent reading or tending a small garden, yet his mind was a storm of compulsion, fueled by fantasies of control and pain. He kept mementos clothing, small trinkets from his victims, hidden in a locked suitcase, as later revealed in court records. His confessions, given after his 1990 arrest, described a need to possess his victims, a twisted justification for his acts. The Moscow News in 1992 quoted psychiatrists who diagnosed him with sadistic personality disorder, though he was deemed sane, fully aware of his crimes. The Soviet system aided his evasion. Police, under pressure to report low crime rates, ignored patterns linking disappearances. In 1984, Chikatilo was briefly detained after suspicious behavior at a train station, but released for lack of evidence, as noted in Izvestia. Informants feared reprisals, and forensic technology was rudimentary blood typing, not DNA was the standard. Meanwhile, Rostov's residents lived in fear, parents keeping children indoors, as the Rostov Gazette reported a phantom killer haunting the region. Chikatilo's capture came in 1990, when a vigilant officer, Viktor Borokov, noticed him loitering near a crime scene. Arrested on November 20th, he confessed after days of interrogation, his voice calm, detailing 56 murders, though 52 were confirmed. His 1992 trial in Rostov was a spectacle. Held in a courtroom with cracked plaster walls, the air thick with ink and tension, crowds gathered outside shouting for justice, as reported by Pravda. Chikatilo, caged in a metal booth to protect him from the public, alternated between defiance and tears, claiming voices drove him. The judge sentenced him to death, and on February 14, 1994, he was executed by a single bullet in Novocherkassk prison, his final moments unrepentant, per Kommersant. Rostov exhaled, but the wounds he left families broken, communities scarred remained. Chikatilo's reign was a dark thread in the Soviet tapestry, a man who thrived in a system too rigid to see him. His story, whispered in Rostov streets and printed in fading newsprint, is a reminder of the horrors that can hide behind an ordinary face. The fear Chikatilo spread wasn't alone, though. Dum 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 dum. Other mysteries haunted Rostov, disappearances that may or may not bear his mark. Let's turn to these unsolved cases, where shadows swallowed the vulnerable, leaving questions that linger still. Picture yourself standing on a windswept street in 1980s Rostov-on-Don, where the Don River glints under a gray Soviet sky, its waters carrying the faint scent of silt and diesel. The city hums with the clatter of trams, the drone of factory machinery, and the low murmur of queues outside state stores, where citizens wait for bread or tinned fish. It's a time of quiet desperation, with the Soviet system fraying, its promises of equality mocked by empty shelves and whispered fears. Beneath this austere surface, A darker current flows children and young adults vanishing without trace, their absences noted in hushed tones. Andrei Chikatilo's confirmed crimes, including 52 murders, cast a long shadow. But other disappearances in Rostov remain unsolved, some possibly his, others hinting at copycats or the heiress transient criminals. Let's walk through these mysteries, exploring the fear that gripped the region and the inefficiencies that let it fester. Told with a gentle cadence to keep you anchored as you drift toward rest. Rostov-on-Don, in the 1980s, was a gritty industrial hub of 1 million. Its concrete apartment blocks and smoky factories, a testament to Soviet ambition. Picture a mother in a faded coat clutching her child's hand at a bus stop, her eyes scanning the crowd for threats. The city's streets, lined with bare trees and cracked pavement, feel oppressive, the air heavy with coal dust and the tang of boiled cabbage from communal kitchens. Disappearances were a growing shadow. A 12-year-old girl, last seen boarding a train in Shakhty, her school bag found in a ditch. A 15-year-old boy gone after a trip to Rostov's central market, his coat spotted near a railway yard. Sovetskaya Rossiya printed brief notices of missing persons, but follow-ups were rare, buried under state propaganda about industrial quotas or anti-Western rhetoric. Chikatilo's confirmed victims 52 children, teenagers, and women between 1978 and 1990 dominated the narrative. His first, Yelena Zakhanova, 9, vanished in 1978. Her body found in a frozen river, as reported by Komsomolskaya Pravda. Police incompetence led to a wrong man's execution, a miscarriage that shielded Chikatilo for years. His later victims followed a pattern, lured from train stations or parks, taken to secluded spots, forests, abandoned sheds where their lives ended. Yet Rostov's missing persons cases exceeded his confessions. Izvestia, in 1989, noted over 200 unresolved disappearances in the Rostov region during the 1980s. Many involving children or vagrants, groups the state often ignored. Some wondered if Chikatilo was responsible for more. His 1990 confession hinting at unverified killings in Ukraine and Moscow. Others speculated about copycats, drawn by the panic his crimes sparked. Picture a train station, its platform crowded with weary travelers, the air thick with cigarette smoke and the screech of brakes. Chikatilo often hunted here, his unassuming figure glasses, cheap briefcase, blending into the throng. But others prowled these spaces too. Transient criminals, drifters, and outcasts who thrived in the Soviet Union's cracks. These men, often unemployed or ex-convicts, lived in flop houses or shanties along the Don, their lives untracked by the state's rigid bureaucracy. Picture a rundown hostel, its air stale with vodka and sweat, where names were scrawled in tattered ledgers, easily forged. These transients, some thieves. Others, predators, exploited the same vulnerabilities as Chikatilo, children selling flowers at markets, runaways escaping abusive homes, or prostitutes working shadowy corners. Their crimes, if they killed, left little trace, bodies lost in rivers or forests, as Moscow News suggested in a 1991 article on invisible crimes. Soviet police inefficiencies deepened the mystery, as the militia, underfunded and loyal to the Communist Party, prioritized political dissent over street crime. Picture a precinct house, its walls peeling, the air heavy with ink and stale tea, where reports of missing children piled up, often dismissed as runaways. Forensic technology was primitive blood typing, not DNA was used, and evidence was often mishandled. Pravda in 1988 criticized the Rostov militia for losing case files, a problem that let Chikatilo slip through in 1984 when detained and released. Detectives worked under pressure to report low crime rates, a Soviet fiction that hid the truth. Families, like those of the missing, faced stonewalling. A mother's plea for her son, vanished near a park, might be met with a shrug, as Rostov Gazette reported in 1987. The state's secrecies and censoring crime news to avoid panic left communities defenseless, parents keeping children indoors, schools canceling outings. The fear was palpable. Picture a Rostov park, its benches empty, the swings still under a gray sky. Mothers whispered of a beast, a term coined by Komsomolskaya Pravda for Chikatilo, though his identity was unknown until 1990. Some disappearances defied his pattern. A 17-year-old factory worker, Last seen near a cinema or a 10-year-old girl? Gone after buying bread. Were they his victims, misattributed by sloppy records, or the work of others? The Moscow Times in 1992 speculated about a second killer, citing cases with different methods blunt trauma. Not Chikatilo's knife, but no arrests followed. The region's transient subculture, fueled by economic decline, made tracking suspects nearly impossible. Vagrants moved between cities, their lives undocumented, their crimes slipping through the cracks. Other factors blurred the truth. Accidents where common children drowned in the Don, fell from trains, or succumbed to disease in unheated tenements. Zvestia reported in 1986 that Rostov's morgue processed 300 unidentified bodies annually. Many labeled vagrant or unknown. Some missing may have been runaways, fleeing poverty or abuse, their trails lost in the Soviet sprawl. The state's focus on ideology over humanity meant these cases were rarely pursued. Families desperate posted flyers or visited morgues, their grief met with bureaucracy. The panicked Chikatilo caused amplified suspicion. Every stranger a potential threat, every absence a possible crime. As you imagine yourself walking Rostov's streets, the wind carrying the scent of frost and factory smoke, you feel the weight of these mysteries. A child's face, sketched on a faded flyer, lingers in a shop window, joined by others whose names are forgotten. Were they Chikatilos, the copycats, or victims of the era's chaos? The questions hang like mist over the Don, unanswered but heavy with loss. The 1980s were a time of fear and silence, where the vulnerable vanished in a system too broken to care. Chikatilo's solitary terror was one face of Rostov's darkness, but another thrived in the open organized, wealthy, and untouchable. Let's turn to the black market kings who ruled the Soviet underworld. Their empire is a stark contrast to the city's struggles. Now imagine yourself stepping away from the chilling shadows of Andrei Chikatilo's Rostov and into a different corner of 1980s Soviet Russia, where the gray facade of state control hides a world of clandestine wealth and power. The air in Rostov-on-Don carries the scent of coal dust and boiled potatoes. But in hidden apartments and back rooms, the faint aroma of imported perfume and smuggled tobacco tells a different story. The Soviet Union, with its crumbling economy and rigid bureaucracy, was a land of scarcity-bred lines, empty stores, and rationed dreams. Yet, in this austere landscape, black market bosses thrived, their empires built on smuggling, extortion, and the quiet desperation of a nation. Unlike Chikatilo's solitary horrors, these criminals operated in organized networks. Their lavish lives a stark contrast to the struggles of ordinary Soviets. Picture a dimly lit dacha outside Rostov, its windows curtained, the air thick with vodka and the clink of rubles changing hands. Let's walk through their world, where cunning was king and every deal was a gamble, told with a gentle cadence to ease you toward rest. Rostov-on-Don in the 1980s was a gritty hub of 1 million, its factories churning out steel and tractors, its citizens queuing for hours at state stores for dwindling supplies. The Soviet economy, strained by decades of central planning, left shelves bare meat was a luxury, jeans a fantasy, and foreign goods a whispered myth. Black marketeers filled this void, their operations as sophisticated as any state enterprise. Picture a warehouse on the city's outskirts, its air heavy with the scent of diesel and contraband crates, where men in leather jackets unload smuggled Polish vodka, East German electronics, or American cigarettes. These bosses, often called farts of sheiky dealers in foreign goods, or Sekoviki underground entrepreneurs, controlled networks that span the Soviet Union, from Rostov to Moscow to Tbilisi. Zvestia, in 1987, estimated the black market accounted for 20% of the Soviet economy, worth billions of rubles, rivaling state industries. Their operations were intricate. Picture a back room in a Rostov cafe, its walls stained with nicotine, or a boss like Vyacheslav Ivan Kovalator, a notorious Moscow crime lord, plans a shipment of smuggled Levi's jeans. Goods came from abroad, often through Baltic ports like Riga, where corrupt officials turned a blind eye for a cut. Trucks rumbled through Ukraine's borders, loaded with West German radios or Finnish furs. As documented in Komsomolskaya Pravda's Rare on Smuggling, In Rostov, black marketeers bribed militia officers with cash or contraband, ensuring raids were staged or evidence lost. They used coded phrases, books for dollars, parcels for drugs, to evade KGB wiretaps. Women played key roles like Tamara Gerbitsatili, a Georgian smuggler who ran a Rostov clothing ring, her charm disarming customs agents. As noted in Moscow News in 1989, these bosses lived opulently, a world apart from Soviet austerity. Picture a private apartment in Rostov Center. Its rooms adorned with Persian rugs, mahogany furniture smuggled from Turkey, and the scent of French perfume. They dined on caviar and Georgian wine, served on tables set with contraband crystal. Ordinary citizens ate buckwheat kasha and tin sprats. Their cars, black Volgas or rare Western Mercedes, rolled through Rostov streets. Past crumbling tenements, their drivers bribed to ignore traffic violations. Pravda in 1986 described a Rostov black marketeer's arrest. His dacha stocked with $50,000 in foreign currency and Italian suits, a fortune when a worker's monthly wage was 120 rubles. Yet their wealth was precarious. A wrong move betrayal, a rival's tip, or a rare honest cop could mean prison or worse. Contrast this with the daily grind of Rostov citizens. Picture a factory worker, his hands stained with oil, trudging home to a concrete apartment block where 6 families share a communal kitchen. His 150 ruble monthly wage buys bread, potatoes, and little else, his wife queuing for hours for a rare chicken, or a schoolteacher, her fingers cramped from grading papers. Earning 100 rubles, her coat patched to survive another winter. Sovetskaya Rossiya, in 1985, reported that 30% of Rostov's residents lived below the Soviet poverty line. There lives a quiet struggle against scarcity. The black market was a lifeline for some buying smuggled medicine or clothes, but a curse for others, as bosses extorted shopkeepers or inflated prices. A pair of American jeans, costing 200 rubles, was 2 months' wages, a dream out of reach. The black market wasn't just about goods, it was power. Bosses controlled Rostov's underworld, running protection rackets and loan sharking alongside smuggling. Picture a market stall, its owner paying tribute to a thug in a leather jacket to avoid a broken shop front. Gangs like the Rostov-based Kazan Syndicate clashed with rivals, or disputes settled in back alleys, leaving bodies unclaimed. As Karmersant hinted in 1990, corruption was rampant. Militia took bribes of 500 rubles to ignore warehouses, per Moscow Times reports. The KGB focused on political dissent, often ignored economic crimes, letting bosses like Ivan Rukavishnikov, a Rostov smuggler, amass millions before his 1988 arrest, as detailed in Literaturная Gazeta. Their network stretched to Moscow's elite, the party officials buying contraband watches or vodka, a hypocrisy that fueled public cynicism. The system's collapse aided their rise. By the 1980s, Gorbachev's perestroika loosened controls, but shortages worsened, making black marketeers indispensable. They exploited ports, railways, and even military bases, smuggling through soldiers returning from Afghanistan. As Moscow News noted in 1989, yet risks loomed: KGB stings, rival gangs, or informants. Rukavishnikov's arrest came after a betrayed partner tipped off authorities, his empire crumbling overnight. Still, many thrived until the Soviet Union's 1991 fall, their wealth paving the way for Russia's 1990s oligarchs. Contrast this with the lives of those like Chikatilo's victims' families, their grief compounded by poverty. Picture a mother, her apartment airless, her 8-ruble pension barely covering rent, mourning a child lost to a killer or the era's chaos. The black marketeers' opulence mocked their struggle, their dachas a world apart from tenements where hope was a luxury. The 1980s were a time of hidden wealth and open despair, where power came at the cost of others' dreams. As you imagine leaving their secret dachas, Rostov's streets fading under a frosty sky, you feel the weight of this divided world. The black market kings' glittering lives built on corruption and cunning stood in stark relief to the quiet struggles of those they exploited. Reminder that in 1980s Soviet Russia, wealth often came at a price paid by the vulnerable. Step back now from the gray, frost-bitten streets of 1980s Rostov-on-Don, where the Don River's quiet ripples fade into the stillness of memory, like a letter sealed and forgotten. You've walked the shadowed corridors of a Soviet workplace, felt the creeping unease of sharing space with Andrei Chikatilo, traced the chilling arc of his reign as the Butcher of Rostov, pondered the haunting mysteries of the region's unsolved disappearances, and glimpsed the hidden opulence of the black market kings who ruled the Soviet underworld. Rostov was a city of stark contrasts: factories and bread lines, a facade of order; shadows, a haven for predators and profiteers; the air, heavy with coal dust, boiled cabbage, the faint promise of smuggled goods, carried the stories of those who endured scarcity, fear, and loss, their lives woven into a tapestry of resilience amid a crumbling system. Picture yourself now standing by the Don's banks, the city's concrete skyline softening in the twilight, the water's gentle flow a soothing counterpoint to the clamor of trams and factory whistles, the offices where Chikatilo worked, the forests where his victims vanished. The secret dakas of black marketeers, they're gone now, their secrets locked in time, preserved in fading newspapers and whispered tales. The names of the missing, etched in police ledgers or mourned in tenement kitchens, linger as quiet echoes, their unresolved fates await on Rostov's memory. The 1980s were a time of silent dread and hidden wealth, where survival meant navigating a world where trust could unravel in an instant. Reflect, if you wish, on the distance between that era and your own. The terrors of Chikatilo's shadow, the grief of families left searching, the glittering deceit of the black market they feel far removed, softened by the years, like a story told in a hushed voice. Yet they remind us of the fragility of safety, the strength it takes to face uncertainty, and the quiet endurance of those who live through such times. The co-worker who avoided Chikatilo's gaze, the parents who posted flyers for their lost children, the workers who queued for bread while bosses feasted, they carried on. Their lives a testament to perseverance in a world that offered little mercy. As you rest tonight, imagine leaving Rostov's icy streets behind, stepping into the warmth of the present, where the air is calm and the night is gentle. The rhythm of those lives, burdened by fear and want, has faded, replaced by the steady cadence of your own breath, a quiet anchor in the now. The past is a tale told, its lessons tucked away like a book on a shelf, its shadows no longer pressing against you. Let the weight of 1980s Soviet Russia drift away, carried by the slow current of the dawn as you sink into the comfort of this moment. Sleep deeply, knowing you're far from the factories, forests, and hidden deals, safe in the tranquil embrace of tonight.